Boston Bruins general manager Don Sweeney needs to be as aggressive as possible heading into the trade deadline. And today we're making some predictions on what actually will be done.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is the daily show where we discuss all things Spoke B. Today is Thursday, March 6th, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your day. It's available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube, and it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Today on the podcast, we are going to make some predictions for the NHL trade deadline tomorrow. It's an aggressive seller's market right now, and Don Sweeney needs to do everything he can to maximize this retooling opportunity. We'll also preview tonight's game against the Carolina Hurricanes and briefly look at Boston's ever shrinking playoff hopes. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins, and you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes, at Ian C. McLaren. All right, now, yesterday, a bit of a bomb dropped by the Tampa Bay Lightning, who went out and acquired two players from the Seattle Kraken in an attempt to maximize their chances of winning this season. They have a very good team once again. They're looking to knock off the Florida Panthers as top team, not only in Florida, but also in the Eastern Conference. And they went out and aggressively pursued two players from Seattle, Yanni Gourde and Oliver Bjorkstrand. They were able to cough up a conditional first-round pick in the 2026 NHL draft and the 2027 NHL draft, and a second-round pick in this year's draft for Bjorkstrand, Gourde, and just unbelievable that the Tampa Bay Lightning each and every year are willing to cough up first-round picks in order to go for it. Bjorkstrand is in the fourth season of a 5-year contract, so they will get him for next season. Gourde is able to become an unrestricted free agent after this season, I believe. Let me just double check that. Now, what that tells me is that it's a really big opportunity for Don Sweeney to maximize returns here heading into the trade deadline tomorrow. He needs to be aggressive in terms of selling. And yes, Gourde can become an unrestricted free agent at season's end. So the Lightning are getting the balance of this season and next season for Bjorkstrand, and Gourde potentially just a rental. Now, Bjorkstrand is probably the best player in that deal, and he is 3 years younger or 4 years younger than Yanni Gourde. But Charlie Coyle's right in that same wheelhouse with Yanni Gourde. He has more goals and more points than Gourde does so far this season. Although Gourde has only played in 36 games, he's got a 0.7 point per game average. Charlie Coyle's at 0.35. But if you look over the last 3 seasons, Charlie Coyle's been more productive than Yanni Gourde. 0.56 points per game, 56 goals, 71 assists for 127 points in 227 games over the past 3 seasons. Gourde 31 goals, 67 assists for 98 points. And the thing here is that, like Bjorkstrand, Charlie Coyle is under contract for this season and next season. So if you look at what the Lightning gave up to acquire Bjorkstrand and Gord, 2 first-round picks this season and next season and the year after that, they're really dipping into the future here in order to acquire, the balance of this season and next out of Bjorkstrand and Gord, who's potentially just a rental. What that tells me is that the Bruins need to look at all possible opportunities here. Teams are calling, teams are loading up, and it's not just pending unrestricted free agents like Trent Frederick, who has already traded to the Edmonton Oilers, but also players that are perhaps a bit older, who would be attractive to teams looking to add some experience, some depth for a playoff run. And the bonus with Coyle is that you can get this playoffs and next if you were to trade a player like him. What that means for Brad Marchand, well, he is injured at the moment, but teams still could come calling. All this to say is that Don Sweeney should not be tentative at all when it comes to looking at a retool. There is a big opportunity here to get some picks, perhaps some prospects or young players from other teams looking to go all in now. Tampa Bay has set the standard here for a willingness to eschew futures for the chance to go for it right this season. And you can bet that other teams will be equally as aggressive to try to keep up with them. You look at even in the Atlantic Division, Tampa, Florida have already made some big moves. Florida adding Seth Jones. They put Matthew Tkachuk on LTIR, so they could be even more in on some pieces before tomorrow's deadline. You look at what the Tampa Bay Lightning did. You look at the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, their window, who knows how long it will remain open. Mitch Marner's a pending unrestricted free agent. They're going to be looking to add big time. So maybe they come in and try to pry a Marchand or a Coyle or somebody away from the Boston Bruins to that end. Or maybe the Detroit Red Wings come calling because they're right on the edge of it. Maybe the Ottawa Senators, who are looking to add in order to take that playoff spot from the Boston Bruins. You look at the Eastern Conference and you look at the playoff picture, it's mostly the same teams in there compared to last year. The Bruins are on the out and in. The Rangers have been able to reclaim their spot. The Devils, they might not go all in because they've lost Jack Hughes and Dougie Hamilton is injured, or maybe they do be aggressive and still try to add because they are in a playoff spot. The reality is it's a seller's market, and the Boston Bruins should be open to any and all offers that come their way between now and 3 p.m. on Friday afternoon, because some teams could get real crazy here and throw out some first-round picks, some highly ranked prospects that the Bruins can do kind of a quick retool here. And if they're really smart about it, could be competitive once again next season. What might that mean? What are my predictions for the trade deadline? We'll touch on that here as the podcast continues. When the games tip off, the action is just getting started, and you want to get in on it with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout any NBA game. So even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can get right in on the action. If you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay. I love you FanDuel's live betting features because it keeps every moment of the game exciting. Whether backing my team for a late game rally or picking a player to hit a clutch three, I never feel like I missed my chance. Plus, the app is easy to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. I love using FanDuel's live betting features. It keeps every moment of the game exciting. And right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The Boston Bruins, of course, have already gotten in on the trade action by sending Trent Frederick and Max Jones to the Edmonton Oilers, recouping a prospect and a second-round pick in this year's draft, which is a nice piece because they did not have their own. It can't end there. They need to keep making some deals here, especially, again, since the Tampa Bay Lightning have gone out there, dealt 2 first-round draft picks for a 33-year-old rental and a 29-year-old guy who, averaging 0.61 points per game this season in Bjorkstrand and will be around for next season as well. Other teams will want to be aggressive and match that. You have reports out of Colorado saying that they are being aggressive in their pursuit of Brandon Carlo. That makes sense. He's a Colorado boy. There was talk that they perhaps wanted to do a package with Trent Frederick, but maybe something else can be worked out there. And look, if they're willing to float one of their top prospects in Cal Ritchie, then I would be all over that. What I think is going to happen, I think Justin Brazeau is a lock to be traded. He's been in and out of the lineup. The Bruins seem to be willing to deal their pending unrestricted free agents. And I think that should be something that happens. Now, before we get into those predictions, I should add the Bruins did make some roster moves yesterday. They sent Georgi Merkulov down to the AHL, as well as Jeffrey Viel, and recalled Patrick Brown, Riley Tufte, and defenseman Ian Mitchell, as well as Vinny Lettieri. Now, what's behind all these moves? Well, for one thing, players need to be on AHL rosters by 3 p.m. on Friday in order to be eligible for the AHL playoffs. So Matt Poitras will likely be assigned to Providence so that he is eligible. Same with Merkulov. Doesn't mean that experiment is done, and it doesn't mean that Poitras will be sent to the AHL. So there's some maneuvering there for sure. I still think that Merkulov deserves a chance to ride out the season as a member of the Boston Bruins if he is not traded. So that's something that you need to know. And perhaps, who knows, maybe Lettieri is a candidate to be moved, as well as Patrick Brown, Riley Tufte, Lettieri, Cole Koepke, Justin Brazeau are all forwards making $800,000 or less, and are all guys that could be moved because they're unrestricted free agents and because teams might be looking to add some forward depth for the playoffs on the cheap. I would expect Brazeau definitely to be moved because of the fact he's had a pretty productive season and he's a cheap, big body. Cole Koepke, I could see being moved very much as well because, again, he's only 26. He had a good start to the season and could bring some depth scoring to the mix there. So I expect, if I'm making a prediction, Brazeau is my lock to be traded, and any of those guys I think could be moved as well. Charlie Coyle, I think, is a real candidate to be traded. A lot of the talk has been on Brandon Carlo, but the Bruins do have a lack of right-hand shots. Do you want to just have, McAvoy's out right now. So right now you have Carlo, Andrew Peeke, and Ian Mitchell as your right-hand shots. It's one thing if McAvoy was healthy, but that would really test the Bruins' defensive depth. But I mean, at this point, maybe who cares? I think the only reason they would keep Carlo is because he's got 2 more seasons at a very manageable $4.1 million cap hit. I don't know, at age 30, 31, if it would be smart to re-sign him. But I think that if a team comes calling and is willing to offer first-round picks or top prospects or solid NHL-ready players, you have to consider moving Brandon Carlo. I don't know if he's going to get any better at this point. There's concerns about, injury history and the like, and maybe his value won't get any higher. Although, if you do hold on to him and want to trade him in his UFA season, perhaps you'll get some more, but it's not the same situation. I do think there could be some interest in Charlie Coyle. His contract may be prohibitive. He can't be traded, sent to the minors, or waived without player approval, and he has a 8-team no-trade list. That's not super prohibitive, but they do need his permission. Carlo has a 10-team no-trade list. If I'm being as aggressive as possible, I'm writing this season off. The Bruins have an opportunity here to really have an opportunity to get the top or a top 3 pick in the NHL draft and turn things around pretty quickly because of the core that they have. You're not trading Jeremy Swayman. You're not trading Charlie McAvoy or David Pastrnak, Mason Lohrei, Matt Poitras likely not happening as well. I know a lot of people think Matt Poitras is not untouchable. I don't think he's untouchable per se, but he is potentially your second or third line center along with Elias Lindholm. The Bruins still need to get that top tier center. If they could pull like a top center prospect away from a team or a guy who can fill that role alongside Pavel Zacha, Morgan Geekie, David Pastrnak on that top line to go with Zacha and Pastrnak, then you got to do it. So here's my official predictions. I do think Brazeau is moved, Cole Koepke, perhaps Parker Witherspoon as pending unrestricted free agents with some value. Maybe Vinny Lettieri sent away as well for some like a late round draft pick. Like I could see a Minnesota Wild being in on him as the guy who's familiar with that organization. I think these are predictions per se, but I think Charlie Coyle and Brandon Carlo should be entertained as trade possibilities because of what happened yesterday in Tampa Bay. And when it comes to Morgan Geekie, I think the Bruins will likely hold on to him because of his RFA status, but his value is not going to get any higher, and his cap hit will go up on his next deal. So that's going to be one where the Bruins really should look to move. My official position is sell, sell, sell. Anybody comes calling, looking to make a deal, the Bruins should get as many draft picks, prospects as they can because this is their best opportunity. The Bruins aren't going to settle for being in this position for too many seasons in a row. The situation being what it is right now, it's important to not get too attached to, especially guys who are in their later 20s or in their 30s. I don't think Brad Marchand's going to trade Carlo, trade Coyle, trade Geekie, get anything out that you can and get as many draft picks in and prospects or pieces that you can for the future. The core is set here. You have a good core in your goalie, defenseman, and one of the best forwards in the NHL. So this isn't a rebuild, but it's an opportunity to take advantage of this down season and get as much as possible for guys who may not be here long term anyways. Now the Bruins do play a game tonight against the Carolina Hurricanes, and it's a game we'll preview here as the podcast continues. Bruins, Hurricanes tonight, the last game before the trade deadline. The Bruins will be without Charlie McAvoy, Hampus Lindholm, Brad Marchand, and let's be honest, not expecting much to happen here in this game in a positive way for the Boston Bruins. The Hurricanes are an interesting team because Pierre LeBrun saying this morning, league sources confirm Carolina has received clarity from Mikko Rantanen's camp as far as not being ready to make a decision on a contract offer by the deadline. So Carolina is talking to teams and seeing what the trade market is for him. Comes down to weighing the best trade offer on the table versus keeping Rantanen as a rental. Very curious for the Hurricanes because they gave up a very good player in Martin Necas to acquire Mikko Rantanen. Hasn't really gone that well so far, and maybe he'll be traded before this game even happens, which would be a benefit to the Bruins. But at this point, I'm not really caring about wins or trying to get into the playoff picture because I don't think it's happening either way. They have a very slim chance right now in terms of point percentage in the Eastern Conference. They are back up to 13th or 12th, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12th in total points. In terms of point percentage, they're 13th. Second worst goal differential in the conference. They've lost 2 in a row, 3-5-2 over their past 10 games. Those losses to Anaheim and Nashville specifically were real backbreakers. You get 2 points from Nashville. You're still right in the thick of it. But right now, they're barely over 500. They are behind the Canadiens, Islanders, Rangers, Red Wings, Senators in terms of point percentage, and would have to jump a bunch of teams with the fewest games remaining. Too good. Right now, the Bruins have 28 wins, and they're 28, 27, and 8, which is technically 28 wins and 35 losses. The loser point doing some heavy are coming in as one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. They are well entrenched in a playoff spot and will be looking to, challenge for the Stanley Cup this season, as they seem to do each and every year. They have won 2 games in a row, 3 of their past 4, although they're only 4-6 over their past 10. They're coming off an overtime win over Calgary and a win over Detroit. They have a pretty good goaltending tandem in Frederik Andersen and Peter Kochetkov, and are led in scoring this season by Mikko Rantanen, who's got 27 goals, 43 assists for 70 points. Sebastian Aho, always potentially deadly as well. Shane Gostisbehere, Dmitry Orlov leading the way on the back end. They have the 11th ranked offense in the NHL, averaging 3.18 goals per game. They're allowing only 2.73 goals per game. They have the second best penalty kill in the NHL, although their power play isn't that great. It's only ranked 14th. The Bruins are 29th on the power play, 22nd on the penalty kill, 28th in goals per game, 23rd in goals allowed per game, and just quite simply not a very good team, even more so without Marchand, McAvoy, Lindholm in the lineup. Again, we'll see who is actually in the lineup tonight with a bunch of these recalls yesterday. There could be some trades prior to tonight's game, which will alter things as well. You're going to want to like this video, subscribe to it, and get the notifications turned on so that whenever there is a trade made, I will post a short immediately, post a reel, and we'll go from there. It should be a very interesting day and a half here for the Boston Bruins. I'm hoping for a bunch of moves. It's a real opportunity here for, Don Sweeney. Looking at the season, you can't say, let's just run it back with a bunch of these guys. Yes, it has been a weird season from the get-go. It was not the off-season we wanted to see, with some trades of Linus Ullmark, the Jeremy Swayman contract situation, new guys coming in fresh, Pasternak, Marchand not having regular off seasons. Things have not gone the Bruins' way, but it's not just circumstantial. It's also roster composition, and you have to make some tough calls here. Yes, there are some personal relationships. There's some guys who have served this team well, like your Coyle, Carlo. But if you can get a return for these guys that you might not see otherwise, then you have to explore that opportunity. If you can get some first rounders, if you can get some prospects, you can make up for having gone for it in past years, trading picks, trading young players for a chance to go for it. And you can potentially, recoup some of those picks and take some positives out of this somewhat lost season. The Bruins aren't making the playoffs. The Bruins still have a core that they can retool around. We're not talking about a rebuild here, but they have an opportunity to get a top 3 or top 5 pick this season. They have an opportunity to add some later first round picks or second round picks from teams who are in Stanley Cup contention. And they have an opportunity to take advantage of some teams who might be willing to flip some prospects for more NHL ready players that have that experience, have that cup or playoff runs under their belt that they can to compete this season, and the Bruins can flip to get some assets moving forward. Again, subscribe to the podcast if you have not already. Please do follow along at Locked NHL Bruins, especially on Instagram. And please do tell someone today about the podcast, spread the word, and let's get the podcast growing here over this next couple of days when there's going to be hopefully a lot of Bruins stuff to discuss. Hope you're all doing well, having a good week, taking care of yourselves. Please take care of each other as well. And check out the Locked On NHL podcast next. All the league news from our local experts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your favorite team every single day.